Welcome to the Erasmus Foundation podcast. My name is Paul Nugent. Are you looking for answers to life and its meaning? Then this may well be the very podcast you need to listen to. In a series of podcasts, we are going to look at the difficult questions of life and apply spiritual knowledge to find out the answers. Hello. Today we have Erasmus from Spirit. Now, Erasmus' spirit name is Mascora, and his last life on earth was as Desiremus Erasmus. Now, he's going to talk to us about the art of writing. Now, Erasmus was a prolific writer, and he will have some insight on the best way to write, because we've always been told that it's important to be clear with our vocal expression and the way we talk to one another, and I assume that this has to be the same with our writing. So greetings, Erasmus, how are you?
Greetings. I am pleasured to have the opportunity to do this recording with you and speak on really what is one of my favorite topics of conversation: words and writing.
So that's great. I know you're very much a wordsmith, Erasmus. So let's start off with a straightforward question as usual. What do we want to write about?
Well, I would suggest to you it is the most fundamental question you would ask yourself in attempting to write anything is obviously, what are you going to write about? Obviously, that's the first consideration. But more importantly, what is the importance of what you wish to write about? How significant is it? Are you just wanting to write something for the sake of putting words down, perhaps without any real purpose or reason, in just that you want to write words for the sake of this? Do you have perhaps a story, a plot, characters you want to develop into a story that you might think others might wish to read? Or more importantly, is there something you really need to say?
Okay. So then we're coming to the why, aren't we? Why are we writing at all? Why are we putting pen to paper or typing on a keyboard? There has to be a reason. You can't just write anything down, can you?
No. Well, this is what I would suggest, although some people do this. But for me, I believe if you're going to write anything, it is because you have a clear vision of the person or the people you want to write to attract their interest in what you have to say. And perhaps B, you have something important you want to put across to people, something you think that is vital, that they should hear. Of course, they may not be interested at all, but in writing it down, at least you are giving yourself the opportunity to express your beliefs and your thoughts. It was Plato that said, some people wish to speak because they want to say something, where others speak because they have something to say.
Yes.
And I think this applies very much with writing as well.
Yes, I think you're right. But the thing is, not everyone can do this, can they, Erasmus? It's not.
No.
Some people are much better at it and more attuned to doing this.
Mm. Mm.
Are we qualified as a person to write, or should we leave it to other people to do?
Well, again, let us consider. Now, there will be those who have been to university and have learnt many, many things about writing, writers, different genre, different styles, different ways of writing. But even so, having learnt all this and studied this for many years, the question still arises, are they qualified to write? Well, yes, they may be technically or with some experience and some knowledge. Of course, in that way they might be qualified. But I would argue and put across the point, which I feel very strongly, is if you're writing about nothing particularly, then is there really any point? So my argument, my suggestion must be, you are writing because, as I said before, you really have something to say, something important you want to put across to people, which in your world perhaps is going to benefit people without sounding arrogant or in any way puffed up about this. But you might have something that you feel is so important and people would benefit from hearing what you have to say. Then, of course, you must write. And then, how qualified you are, how good a speller you are, how good you are at using the right words, and the breadth and depth of your vocabulary is important. But really, I would say more importantly, is the subject matter of what you want to say.
Also, I think I've read some books that aren't probably as well written as others, and yet they capture you because of the sincerity behind what is being written. So it is the heart behind the written word as well, Erasmus, apart from the technical side that's important, would you say?
Well, again, I think there are two distinct categories with writing. Now, I know I watch many of you watching your televisions, and you look at a story as a play, as a drama, as a piece of theatre on your television. And what captures your attention and is regarded as good, entertaining, is how the plot changes, how you're drawn by the characters, the development of the story, and all of this. And that is a measure of a good writer. That is true. But all of that is simple fiction, which of course has its place and can also offer important knowledge to people by the incident of being a fictitious story, which might carry some inner meaning or some depth of content within the story, which is of value for people and might give them some understanding, some knowledge they did not have before. But on the other hand, what am I doing? I am really trying to express my preference, my concern if you would have it. For those who write perhaps in the genre I understand as non-fiction, creative non-fiction, narrative non-fiction, whereby it can still be a story, it can still be written as fiction, but in fact, it has far more depth of meaning, of truth behind the story, and really of greater benefit, and giving over, expressing and offering knowledge to others. And I would argue that is more beneficial. And to justify what I'm saying, of course, you need to be entertained at times. And pure fiction, without any depth of meaning, can entertain you and give you some relief at the end of a day's hard work. Yes, I understand. But generally speaking, if you're asking me, as someone, I did write a lot on the earth. I was more concerned about the more serious aspects of the reasons why I would write. And I still think that has some value for today as well.
So, Erasmus, what motivated you to write?
I think it is because I had an idea in my mind and I wanted to share that. It's as simple as this. If you believe something, if something is important to you, then if you are a generous person, of course, you would want to share that with others. And that was and would be my way of doing this. It is perhaps too much to impose your thoughts and beliefs on others in conversation, unless, of course, they ask you deliberately what you are interested in. Then you have the opportunity to speak. But generally speaking, I would say that with writing, with a book or leaflet you have written, something of this nature, people are free to pick it up or reject it as they wish. And by that means, you are not imposing yourself or interfering too much in other people's lives.
You spoke many times, Erasmus, about the crumb rather than the cake, and to explain to the listeners that giving information to other people, you need to give very small amounts and see whether that's digestible for them rather than throwing the whole cake at them. And
Indeed.
I assume that must be the same with your writing, is it?
It was something I actually was concerned about when I used to write. I was aware of that then, as I still am with the duties I perform as a tutor from Spirit now. But I would always do this. I would have a simple idea and I would express or consider different aspects around that idea. And by doing that, it would give me volumes of thoughts and words I would want to use to consider, to evaluate, to look at many different views on that particular subject, which might be the views of many people who might consider reading my offering. But in that way, I would be covering lots of interesting subjects or issues around that one particular subject. And I think that way I did not write too much.
Okay. So when you talk about writing, you talk about formatting and style and vocabulary, all these things.
Mm.
Now, I don't think many of us are taught to such a level at school to accomplish this satisfactorily. That's my view. What do you think about that?
Well, I think again, the academic issues you mentioned, the grammar, the vocabulary, all these things, whether it needs editing or whatever, there will always be those who are well qualified to perform those functions. But what is needed in your world is somebody with something of value to say. And I think that is more important. And I think if you've got something to say, if you write something, whether it be fiction, a story, non-fiction, whatever it may be, an article, an essay, however it may be, if it is of value, the content of what you're saying, that is what is important. And that should not be dismissed, I believe, if for some academics they would find perhaps the vocabulary or the grammar didn't fit what they would expect. Those things can be changed. But the importance is for people to have new ideas, to offer new discoveries within your world, offering something new. That is what is important.
Are we talking about inspiration here, Erasmus?
Well, what is inspiration? Really, I would suggest to you that, I mean, this is a big topic for discussion, really.
Yeah, it's true.
But I would suggest, as simply as possible, that inspiration very often comes from spirit. It certainly comes from your mind, not your brain, but your mind. It is the creative aspect of yourself. And that is where you might invent new ideas from your own mind, from your own experiences, and what is contained within your mind deeply from spirit, from previous lives you've had. All of this is contained within the mind, maybe overshadowed by the brain, so you have difficulty in accessing this material at times. But sometimes something surfaces within the mind, and the person thinks, that might be a good idea to write about. And so it goes on. Or, as I say, it could be that spirit draw near and place a thought in your mind. And you think suddenly, that is a good idea, something I must write about.
Now, people don't read as much as they used to, Erasmus, do they? There's so many other ways of accessing information. And to be honest with you, there's an awful lot of drivel out there that is given on TV, on books, and radio and everything else. And people don't sit and physically read a book like they used to. I mean, have a bit of a disadvantage being blind, and I don't physically read a book, which I think in that method you are picking up the way that the grammar is and the vocabulary and all the rest of it. You're picking it up more so than the way I access books, and that's audibly. Mm-hmm. So I think that people should be encouraged more to read, would you say?
Well, they will if they want to.
Yes.
And it is not, I would suggest, easy or perhaps even correct to try and impose or impress people to read more. One can only suggest. And there is a market there. People are interested in reading. It is not that they all go to the cinema or television or whatever they choose to do. Again, perhaps more in later life. Older people perhaps do more reading than they did when they were young. And of course, those who are scholarly at university or whatever, of course, are forced to do a great deal of reading to enable them to gain sufficient knowledge to pass their examinations. So there is a market there. And I think, as I say, if you have something to say which is of value for people, then if they get to know of this, they will be eager to read what has been written.
And, knowing your subject, Erasmus, very important.
Oh, indeed. That is the essential starting point. Again, it goes back to that original question. Why am I writing? What am I going to write about? And of course, if you have something you want to put over, which is new, which is going to perhaps offer some knowledge, teaching to others, then of course you must know your subject well.
Yes, indeed. So, where would you publish these things? Who would be the audience, if you like, for your subject matter?
Well, I consider today, in comparison to how I was living on the earth back all those hundreds of years ago, that you have far more opportunity to publish on television, in newspapers, magazines, and in books in so many ways, as this podcast is yet just another form of a publication, an announcement to the public for people to take interest in or not, as they so choose. And I think in your day today, you have all this opportunity, far greater than it has ever been before, for people to share knowledge and to communicate ideas. So I think that is very exciting. And if I had known of this as Erasmus when I was writing, I perhaps would have been most jealous that those opportunities were never there in that day.
We're coming to the end of the podcast. It's been very interesting. Is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you'd like to talk about?
No, I just want to say, if you've got something important to say, then say it. Whether you can consider yourself a good writer or not, I don't think it matters, really. Because if you've got something that is important to share with others, then you must do it. Your world is a world of so many people, so many, and you are here to learn from each other, to share with each other, and to have good communication with each other. So important, across nations, right across your world. And if this is just one form of communication that brings people together and share knowledge and understanding, then it is very, very worthwhile.
Thank you very much, Erasmus. Good talking to you as usual. Thank
you. Thank you.
The Erasmus Foundation is a spiritual teaching and healing foundation based in Laxfield, Suffolk, in the United Kingdom. We have a webpage, www.erasmus-foundation.org. If you would like to be a guest on our podcast, or indeed have further questions for us, then please contact me on paul@erasmus-foundation.org, and we'll do our best to accommodate you. Thank you very much for listening.